Awesome. Hello, everyone. I think folks are trickling in from our waiting room. Welcome to our post-academy fireside chat. It's lovely to kind of have a space again where we can come together with our students and TAs from this year's academy. Hopefully you've gotten some rest. I know if you're in school, I know a lot of schools have gone back into session, so sure you all are busy. We have some great panelists here today. The focus of our discussion will be around kind of what's next, especially around networking and thinking about things for folks that maybe don't have access to going to conferences or traveling a lot. What are some ways that you can leverage your experience and kind of move yourself into that next step and direction that you are interested in? Today is very question driven. We have a couple that were pre-submitted. We'll do kind of a round of introductions with our panelists and some general topics, but really this conversation is about what all of you want to hear about. So we have our Q&A function in our Zoom webinar. So please use this. You can write your question, and then as kind of another person within the webinar, you can upvote questions. So if there's ones that you really like, please upvote it. And we will be going through those, answering as many as we can. So please get those questions kind of flowing in the Q&A. And just to note, we will be recording this event, so we'll be able to share it with you after the event as well. And then you can DM myself or the panelists if you do need any tech support of any kind, but hopefully we're all good there. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen. So we'll just have our group of panelists. But we'll go ahead and start with a quick round of introductions. So let's see, Elnaz, you're kind of first on my screen. Do you want to share a little bit about who you are and kind of maybe your background that you're bringing to this discussion today?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Elnaz, and a very short sentence. I'm a dentist turned into neuroscientist and turned into data research strategist right now. And that's the shortest of the story. And I've been working with Neuromatch community since very first day. And I've been one of the people that have learned a lot and got a lot from this community. And I encourage you to ask all the questions that you think relevant or irrelevant here today. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Elnaz. Let's see, Brad, you're next for me. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Brad Wyble. I'm a professor at Penn State University, and I come from a background of computer science and then transitioned into neuroscience and then from there into psychology. So I've been through a lot of different career transitions, and I have a sort of interdisciplinary perspective on how a lot of these different fields meld together. I was also one of the co-founders of Neuromatch back in 2020, and that's been a tremendously amazing journey for me.
Thank you. Let's see, Avisha, you're next for me.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Avisha. My background is I was trained as an electrical engineer in India, and during my bachelor's and master's, and then I transitioned to psychology. Those kind of questions interested me. So I'm looking into how people make mental models about other people, different mechanisms of that. I'm in the third year of my PhD right now in US at University of Southern California. And yeah, I've been involved in Neuromatch since the beginning as student, as TA, as volunteer. And it has helped tremendously at every stage. Yeah, happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks. Let's see, Peter, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Peter. I'm from Nigeria. My background is in mathematics and statistics. Then I transitioned into education, done that for a lot of years. I run an academy in my country for upwards of about 30 years. Then I started with psychology, now computational neuroscience. My PhD is in computational statistics. I've been with Neuromatch for about 3 years plus, being a volunteer, part of professional development, open science course, TA for the academy, and all of that. I'm happy to answer your questions too.
Thanks. And Conrad?
Great. I'm also a co-founder of Neuromatch. I'm a Penn professor. I'm and doing neuroscience, cognitive science, data science, and theory of AI. I'm very, very badly focused, and I think I'm mostly interested in how we can learn about the universe these days.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. And I'm Courtney, Dean. I'm our program director at Neuromatch, so I'm just helping facilitate this discussion, but also happy to answer questions too. Great. Well, with those introductions, I think we can kind of jump into our topic of the day. So really looking at next steps for our students, our TAs, folks that have interacted with the Academy. Let's just go around and do some kind of general tips, advice that you all have. A pretty broad question, but would love to hear if you have tips on networking, if you have tips on kind of leveraging their experience from the course this year, anything in that realm. So maybe we'll go the opposite way. Conrad, do you want to lead us? Oh, and you're muted.
That's what the old people do. I think what I most want to emphasize, given that I get the microphone first here, is why we're all here. Now, like, we are here so that everyone can ask their personalized questions. You can ask, like, hey, I want to apply to a lab. What are the ways that get me into that lab? You can ask questions like, hey, I have a research question there, but my skill set is here. How am I going to get there? You can ask questions of the nature of like, what is a good way of getting into this field that I really care about? You can ask, like, what's a good way of networking with others? So, like, the thing that I always find in these Q&A things, and we have done a lot of them over the years, is that you need to ask questions as soon as possible, because 100% of the time, at the beginning, kind of there's a lull, and like people like Conrad talk a lot and talk, and nothing's happening. And then like halfway through it, we get like 500 questions and we don't get to your personalized questions. So ask your questions now. You will be sad if you don't. Sorry, Courtney. I hope that was okay.
No, that was good. Yes, ask your questions, folks. Do you want to add anything else or just promo for the question box?
I just want to promote the questions. Go
Perfect.
put them in already.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Let's see. We'll keep going around kind of as you all are adding questions to the question box, as Conrad asked. But we'll do kind of our general question that I asked initially. Peter, do you want to add anything, kind of general advice, thoughts on networking, kind of for our students and TAs?
Yeah, so building on top of what Conrad just said, there are no foolish questions here, okay? It becomes foolish when you don't ask questions. So please ask your questions and ask them early enough. The other thing is to know that there are different participants here. There are some who are undergrads, there are some that are postgrads, there are some who are in the industry, and there's some of us who are even in the faculty. So you will help everybody when you ask your question. You become a resource person. So I join with Conrad, ask questions. Thanks, Courtney.
Cool. Yes, I feel like, yeah, good advice in life. Let's see. Brad, I think you wanted to ask the question or answer the question that was put in the box. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, well, actually, I misclicked. I meant to start typing an answer and I pushed the wrong button, but I'm happy to talk about it. So I first of all wanted to offer some general advice, which is that one of the interesting things that you sort of note along the way is that if you end up in a good conversation with someone and you agree to collaborate on something, just bear in mind that that agreement is not a sort of binding contract. And sometimes those agreements you just like have a great conversation and you're like, we're going to do this project together. And then they end up ghosting you. And that just happens. Don't take it personally if that does happen. Just understand that everybody has things going on in their life. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It just means that maybe they got so distracted when they got back to their life. So that's one of the sort of things that
and it's
you had
often also just like
learned
mental health episodes when I hear professors talk about it. Not like the people you might collaborate with are just like you and everyone else. That like stuff happens.
Yeah. So, be patient. Like maybe a few months later, like that's a better time and you can approach them again. So like, if you end up in a situation like that, pester them too often with emails, but maybe bring it back up gently a few months later, and sometimes you can rekindle it.
I, Brett, just like there's different takes on things. I do pester people with emails. If someone doesn't answer me, I will email them again after
Yeah.
2 weeks, and then I'll email them weekly, and eventually I'll be like, hey, if you don't want to do it, just let me know you don't want to do it. And most of the time I get like, hey, I'm so sorry, I get totally overwhelmed.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
like a certain amount of pestering. Now you can also pester editors of journals.
Yeah,
Has
that's
been
right.
in review forever. Like go pester them. Like someone owes you something, go pester them. I think pestering is just fine. Just do it with grace, assuming that the other person probably has like stuff going on.
That's
But
right.
also you don't want that your email gets stuck, which happens to me also a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, it doesn't matter what kind of role you have in this days that everything is online communication. Even you yourself can miss some emails from some of your collaborators, your friends, anybody. And you can also understand that, like, how easy it is to get it lapsed. And I always tell my friends, my juniors, to like, if I don't respond, just send it again, because that's how it works. Or I
Yeah.
remember my own master supervisors once told me, like, if I don't respond to your email, just put a caps lock word in your subject so I could see it again. Um, yeah, I mean, be gentle, but like be persistent and be continuous in the communication.
And you can also, if you're a sort of like junior partner in a collaboration, right, it can also be helpful to indicate that you're the kind of person who's easy to work with because you're willing to sort of put in the work to sort of build the infrastructure to make the collaboration possible. So that can also help make it seem like they're not the person who's going to be doing the heavy lifting all by themselves, that you're gonna do your part. That can also matter a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, like, let me clear about the expectations there. If you're relatively young and you're talking with a young professor, they might be willing to talk with you like basically weekly until the project is over. If you're approaching a very senior person, they will talk with you a couple of times to like get the ideas going, and then they will talk with you again to like write up the paper. There is kind of like a bit of a continuum there. I don't think it's bad faith. It's just kind of like senior professors do have like crazy lives. Now, Brad, I wanted to come back to the question of anonymous attendee because I think there's a little more
Yes. No, I
background.
agree. Yes. Yep.
I like to read it in light of the current geopolitical situation and uncertainties in visas. Is it possible of long-term remote positions like postdoc for computational theoretical and analyst projects being considered by investigators? That very much depends by who you're talking about. But like, for example, I couldn't consider it. Why not? Because basically, and like most federal monies, we can't even spend outside of America. University, at least my university, generally balks at anyone that's hybrid already. They will sometimes let me do like remote positions within the United States, but there's like no way, and like and it's really complicated. So there is a workaround that I once was able to use for a person that works like this. The university hires an agency in that company, and that agency then hires you. But this is both very expensive and really complicated to set up. So by and large, and also I think it's like bad from multiple perspectives. I, as professor, feel I learn a ton from all my students when they're in person. I feel I learn much less from the online people, and I see much less growth, intellectual growth from people that I online supervise. I don't know, like maybe the others, maybe Brett, you have experience, but like most of the time I couldn't make it work.
No, I agree with Conrad that it really, I mean, it does depend on the funding situation, but even if the funding allows it, then the university itself might also put up roadblocks that will make it difficult to pay people overseas or for remote work. So it is a very idiosyncratic situation, but the answer is typically no. At least in the US, right? And so like that's where Conrad and I are coming from, but there are different regulatory environments in different countries. For example, within the EU, like moving money back and forth across country borders probably is very, very easy.
Yeah, and I'll just add from Neuromatch's perspective, I think this is something we're definitely aware of, and we're really thinking about what it could look like to offer more opportunities, either for students kind of coming out of undergrad or coming out of a PhD. What could kind of that career development pipeline look like? And we do everything remote and are able to hire folks in pretty much any country. So I think that's something we're trying to investigate on our end more, trying to find funding for programs like that through Neuromatch, since we know that the bureaucracy of there's a lot of bureaucracy in academic institutions, and Neuromatch can kind of cut through that since we're a bit smaller. So yes, it's a good question.
May I add something? Because
Mhm.
the shift to online work has started and got boosted through pandemic, and a lot of things that were easier to handle and make it more efficient were mostly in industrial kind of work, and in education we have not yet been there. It might need some time and effort to like find that optimal way of giving supervision and optimizing productivity in research section. So right now it might be a little bit problematic, but that needs some sort of like move and shift sometime.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. I think I will take us to some of our other questions that are in. Well, I'll pause. Avisha and Elnaz, I didn't give you a chance to answer our general question. Avisha, do you have any kind of general high level advice that you would like to share with folks around kind of networking and leveraging their experience? And make sure you unmute.
Yeah, I think from my experience 2 years back, just talking to people helped a lot. I stayed connected to the mentor I got from Neuromatch from the project we did when I was a student. That mentor helped me immensely with, reviewing my application materials, helping me even select labs which I want to apply. So that was one point of networking which helped me a lot. And one of the sole reasons why I wanted to work in professional development arm of Neuromatch, because it helped me a lot. So I think that was one of the things, like talking to people there and finding out. Even the TA I had helped me a lot later. I'm still connected to that TA. I'm friends with him, and we meet at conferences. And he helped me, this lab, that lab. He's also in US right now. So those kind of networking points were very useful. Apart from that, just talking within Neuromatch community, how to approach people, and I think just cold emailing. I cold emailed tons of people sitting from India, in Europe labs, and in US labs. And surprisingly, like I think if I mail, like I got responses from 40% people back, almost always. Sometimes you don't get any response and it's fine. And I just like remind them once or twice, then you let it go. But when you do get response, it's amazing. Like some very senior professors sometimes responded me with some very thoughtful words which kept me going even if they didn't have positions open, and they like sometimes pointed me towards labs who are looking for people, or sometimes told me that if your research interest is A, you can maybe work in B as well, or like over like slight correction happened over emails. People talked to me, and that helped shaped a lot of how I emailed more, and then ultimately got the lab where I am right now. That's the networking aspect of it, apart from building a research skill set as well, which I can talk about more later. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted
So
to add.
Courtney,
Oh, no, after you,
Avisha,
Peter.
on
Sorry.
top of what, yeah. Okay. So to build on what Avisha said, you need to get used to receiving rejections. Okay. Never get rejected. Okay. The least that you can do is to send a letter to the prof and ask, what could I do better, so that when next you're applying, you will, use those lessons. So don't get frustrated when you apply and don't get selected. Conrad, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to add a little depth to what Avisha says, because I think there's an insight behind what she just explained that is super important. So it's about specificity. I don't know exactly how you did it, Avisha, but like there's a very easy way how I decide whom I answer and whom I don't answer. If it's unspecific, I don't know what to do about it. Like, no, like, how do I, like, someone emails me, like, how do I get a job at your pen? Like, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not going to even forward you to my colleagues because, like, whereas if someone is like, I'm interested in this very narrow, nerdy thing, I really want to do a PhD in that area. And they've done the homework to figure out that I'm kind of like one of like the five people doing this very nerdy thing. Then I feel like, okay, like, look, like I have a duty to answer them because they and me nerd out about the same thing. So the more you can make the emails you send be like super specific in a small area, the more the professors that are really good will answer. And if it's sufficiently specialized, a Nobel Prize winner will answer you. But basically, it needs to be clear why you need their attention. Or like if someone else can answer it, then they won't. So it needs to be like just super precisely targeted.
Yeah, just adding to that, I totally agree. And I think I saw a difference. When I was emailing people for summer internships in the third year of my undergrad, I didn't know what is the general lay of the land in this field because I was switching from engineering. So correction happened over emails. I remember my first few emails were so broad. And then over time, by my fourth year, when I was applying and when I actually started getting replies, they became specific as I learned and as some of the kind people gave me feedback. And just in general, talking to anybody you know around you who has gotten replies and who has worked in that space can help you immensely narrow down the emails. And like you said, doing homework for every lab, what they're working on and how it links with me. So, yeah.
I actually want to like add a couple points to what Avisha and Conrad beautifully explained. It's not only like getting connected and getting into labs in this area. Like, as I said, I was a dentist, but I was also trying to get involved in the research in neuroscience, and I didn't really have much of access to the kind of the work I really wanted to do. And I had lots of good Iranian scholars that were working in West and sometimes visiting in Iran. But most of our work have been online during the era of Skype. Like back then, that the only video platform was even Skype. Um, in my master's, I also decided to do something that my lab wasn't focused on. So I had to like ask some of my questions from the leader of the field. And the first email I remember I sent was this like authority of the field that had like three published books on this. And I just thought like, whatever, I'm not gonna lose anything. I'm just gonna send worst situation. I'm not gonna get any answer. Like I remember 1 hour later, I I got a response like, "What data do you want?" And a few emails back and forth, I got connected to the postdoc on that project and a few other project. I got their data set and I used one of those data sets in my experiment. And that was just it. Like I was very specific about what I want. I'm doing this project, I'm stuck in here. Can you help me? And that ended up with me actually doing research in Iran or in my master's and keeping that connection. And a couple years later, I referred my junior into that very same postdoc, and he helped him to get a position in another lab in somewhere in Europe that I have no idea about. But another thing is like when you want to go into another lab, some of the labs don't like you to be very specific because they want some flexible students to be able to be put on the ongoing projects. So like be specific, but not too specific that you wouldn't seem to be flexible in the fluidity of the research world.
I was just going to amplify emailing postdocs. So if you email back and forth with postdocs a few times, your email to the professor that you come write a little later will A, be much more specific, and B, you will understand what the professor is into. It's like super useful. Email postdocs, email PhD students.
Yes, I mean, like sometimes even the professors get you to their postdocs. They're like, okay, this paper is out. The project was done by this PhD and this postdoc. Be connected to them. They know what the research has been done and they'll help you how to analyze it. That was really interesting to me. And even if Conrad remembers, I've known him before Neuromatch in the same way. Like I've been directing him on Twitter, asking some questions like what this paper you've published was on, and that is how I actually got into Neuromatch. So when you're asking question about the research, the work they're done, and where you're stuck, you'll probably get answers, and you can actually get some of your work done that you don't have access to the supervisors in your own institution, or like they're not in the field, or you don't have that kind of things. But it miraculously works.
See, Peter, you want to?
Just transitioning to the next one of the questions that have been pre-submitted. Let me just read it out and make one or two comments.
Yeah, go for it.
So AI presents the development, at this level. The industrial sector is advancing so rapidly with AI. So the question is, what do we think are the advantages or significance of obtaining a PhD? So who needs a PhD after all? That kind of question. So where I come from, we have this acronym PhD, read like this: be patient, be humble, and be disciplined. Okay, so for the 5 to 5 years of your PhD, you need to be patient with yourself. And once you're out of it, it becomes a lifestyle. Even in traffic, your spouse will tell you, you're a patient guy now. So PhD teaches you some things that AI cannot. You need to be humble to learn from your mentors and colleagues. The space we provide in Neuromatch Academy is such that it gives room for peer learning, social learning and all of that. So with your PhD, you should be humble enough as a lifestyle, and then be disciplined enough to continue. Because what I realized after my PhD was that I found out I had so much time. For the period of the PhD, the issues were trying to get a paper published, trying to run your analysis. For the four years, it was really intense. But immediately after the PhD, I found out that there was enough time for me because I built up myself, through collaboration and all of that. So what am I saying? AI can't do that. There's a human face that the PhD gives to you. Yeah, I don't know what you guys think about that.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Do anyone else have comments? Again, the question was around like the field of AI is moving so quickly. Do you still think getting a PhD in the AI field is helpful, is not helpful? Yeah, what are folks' thoughts? See, Brad, do you want to go first? I saw you come off mute.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a lot of direct experience in the sort of industry side of things. But I will say that one of the things that the PhD process typically emphasizes is the development of general purpose learning and research strategies, which sort of transcend the weekly or monthly fluctuations in what directions people are looking at. So, like, especially if you have a good program, it's going to prepare you to deal with whatever's coming your way, as opposed to sort of more specialized training in a specific technique. If you do that, that might sort of put you at the head of the pack right now, but like in a year, that technique might suddenly be overridden, and then you're going to be looking for the next direction. So, from that perspective, I think a PhD gives you a good sort of general approach.
I was just going to add that there was a time where a lot of people were driving to do PhDs in AI. Like it's extremely difficult to get into those. The professors usually look for theoreticians in the first place. And the last point is that the world doesn't need more people who are just trained in AI. I think what the next generation, if I were to choose something now, I wouldn't choose AI, I would choose AI plus X, where X probably would be more than half of it. Now, like applications of AI in neuroscience, much easier to get hired. Just like AI, core AI, that's impossible in academia these days. I mean, like massive disbalance between applicants and jobs.
And I also don't know, like PhD in AI is becoming too general right now, because AI is also branching out in like what aspect of AI, what kind of AI applied in what. And it also depends like what you want to do if you want to like, what part of this industry do you want to be? If you want to be the one that develops it, you need different sets of skills. If you need to be in the research side of it, you need a whole other side of the word in it. So you really need to know what part of this whole industry you want to be, because in industry that I'm trying to like push myself in that word mostly right now, the PhDs are required for a very specific part. For developing the whole system, like the generative AI or like fine-tuning or anything, nobody wants you to have a PhD. You want to know how to do it. Regardless of your degree, if you have the record of you're good at development, that's basically what gets you hired. So it's very general when you say like if PhD is needed in AI or like what part of AI or anything. It's just you have to know what part of it you're interested in.
Yeah, thank you all for that. And for those who submitted questions ahead of time. I'm going to move us to Mahmoud's question. So, given choosing a mentorship can be a bit out of reach for some folks, so we know there's probably not as many mentors or there are people who need a mentor, how would you suggest to fill that gap to get that experience and scientific rigor needed to be a good scientist independently? So, yeah, do folks have thoughts on that question?
I mean, like it's hugely difficult. Now, the field exploded so rapidly that you basically have very, very few experienced professors. And on top of it, industry's been raiding academia for a long time. So we constantly lose many of the best professors in the field. So access to good mentors is extremely difficult. I'm trying to do something about it at the moment. I'm writing a web app that acts as like at least a cheap, easy replacement mentor. It's called planyourscience.com. There's a new, much more powerful version upcoming. But yeah, like it's a serious problem. I don't think there's a good solution yet.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't have any direct experience with gaining experience without a mentor because that's what I had. So it's difficult for me to sort of provide a specific sort of personal example about that. Um, Definitely reading and trying to do your own work can be helpful. If you have an established GitHub presence, that can also be a sort of indicator, but by itself is not the same thing as a replacement for mentoring. I also want to second though Conrad's plan your science approach. I think it's a really good idea.
I can talk a little bit about it. For a while, I didn't have mentor when I was switching from engineering in this field. Again, I think I sound like a broken record right now, but I just like cold emailed a tons of people. So I had like distributed, fragmented mentorship from internet through people. A lot of graduate schools resources helped me actually. For example, John Hopkins has this volunteer program run by their PhDs and professors, I think, who help you review your application materials when you're applying for master's or PhD. And there are other programs, at least I know in US, who help people from underrepresented regions to review their application materials. So at least got help at that stage from there. Um, Similar programs exist and a lot of resources exist on their program websites about how to narrow down a lab, how to reach out people in their institute, and those kind of things. And then, yeah, ultimately Reddit helps a lot as well. But yeah, ultimately I did manage to get an in-person mentor in a lab in India. But if that's not possible for you, I would just do all of these things. Or in whichever country you are, look at the institutes there as well. Even if you plan to do higher studies abroad, but those people in the middle can be immensely helpful to build skill set or tell you whom to talk to get that skill set. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Oh, Elnaz, do you want to add something on that? Or?
Not really. I just want to say, like, I've been sporadically mentored myself. Sometimes I had great mentors and sometimes I had none. And I don't think I turned out really great, but there are good resources for self-studying as well. And sometimes it's like looking at yourself and try to measure yourself and your skills in a unbiased criteria as much as you can, and then see where your gaps are. Just don't look at it emotionally that I'm not mentored, so I'm bad at this and this. Be practical, be precise, and then find for the resources and also like be more strategic with your networking to help you to find those potential sporadic mentors in the areas you like to improve yourself.
There's another thing I want to point out to those who were students during the academy. I know a few of them are here. I would like to say engage with the materials, especially the outros, check the references. You will see some resources that could get you linked to will-be mentors. And then you can also volunteer. That's one thing a lot of people fail to do. You could start by being a volunteer, help here and there, and push forward your right foot, and people see that you are able to do a couple of things, and then they share with you, find the gaps in your life, and you become better. That's how I learned, sharing my own personal experience to move, except with prosthetics. So I'm dependent on people around me. But that has turned out to be an advantage because I ask lots of questions and I'm always ready to get, corrected. So to the younger folks, I would say, why not volunteer? And then, you never can tell. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a saying that says, especially in the rules of communication, that like try to give before get. And that makes the communication persistence. Like, don't make it one way. Share resources and then ask for resources, or like volunteer and then ask for being helped. And volunteering is actually, well, as a lived experience that I started for volunteering for Neuromatch and in other places, it's a great way of learning because you have the opportunity to do something you have never done before and you're volunteered. So not much of bad outcome if you don't do it right. But you push yourself, you learn, you communicate, and you meet a lot of good people, and it opens a lot of doors. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you all. Let's see, for our next kind of question, there was a student that asked about kind of narrowing research interest. I feel like we've talked a lot about it is important to have a narrow research interest and also some flexibility, but for folks that are new into a field or switching fields, do you all have recommendations on how to begin to narrow that interest and learn more about the field?
Yeah, so sorry, I'm going first. This is very interesting. Research these days is multidisciplinary, is interdisciplinary, we all know. And it's not possible for you to have expertise in all the fields. So I think what you can do is to showcase what you know, and you'll be surprised that it's relevant in the scheme of things. And like, wait to see what you will see. So there's always something that you have.
But I mean, otherwise, I can also just I want to make a point for nodding out here. So, one way of figuring out what you want to do is learn to fall in love with ideas. It's just like if you read papers and you're like, yeah, this is all interesting, then you haven't yet kind of like found what you're really meant for. But if you like, if you try and dive in deeply, like read take the paper you find most interesting and then read the most similar three papers. So most people that are happy doing science are people who eventually fall in love with ideas. Most people that are unhappy with their PhDs are just people who didn't fall in love with an idea and they do a PhD just because they're like, yeah, like I want to be a scientist very broadly. Like we are scientists because we fall in love with ideas. And And I want to encourage you to like allow yourself to fall in love with ideas and then go all in. Getting obsessed, exactly. Getting obsessed, Elnas. That's what it's about. Yes, it's like right now I'm building an app and like I know every piece of it. The app.
Does anybody else want to add to that one?
No, I think I just want to plus one that. I think I fully agree. Apart from reading, falling in love is very important. Yeah.
Nice. Didn't know you were all getting relationship advice and science advice today.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. All right. I'll move us to our next pre-submitted question. Oh, sorry, Peter. Did you want to add something?
So let me just go on, please. Courtney, so I checked the attendance and I saw that I think judging by the name that
Oh, you're cutting out a little bit, Peter.
People that this question could, help. There are some people who come from, okay. So you go on. If you can't hear me, go on, Courtney, go on.
Okay, we'll come back to you. I can't hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. So I was saying that if you come from, under-resourced environment, there's a lot that you need to do. Okay. So let's take this next question and I'll come back. Let me see. Go on. You just go ahead. I'll talk about that later.
Cool. We'll come back to you. So our other, one of our last pre-submitted questions was around, so there's might be too general, but do you have any suggestions for people coming to Comp Neuro from a computer science background? Which we know actually a lot of folks from our courses do come from computer science background and then make that switch into Comp Neuro. So I think that's probably a pretty shared experience by some folks on this call. So do any of you have thoughts around making that specific transition from? Yeah. See, Brad, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things that I note in people who come from the AI or computer science background is that they have a sort of relatively flat understanding of how the complexity of the biology is. And you should be prepared to be amazed by how difficult and complex the biology is. So just be extremely humble and be ready to understand that the biology side of things is actually probably much harder than the computational side that you've been working with, because there's not like specific like engineered mechanisms that you know how they work. There's a bunch of incredibly complicated spaghetti wiring, basically. It's like the worst code that you've ever had to review in your life. And you just need to sort of be ready to appreciate how wrong you can be and how many different levels of sort of mechanisms that coexist are in that space.
So if I can add to Brad's comment, I've been mentoring a lot of people on this path, and yeah, there's the complexity piece, but there's also the questions piece. So the typical computer science student, when they enter my lab or I start collaborating with them, are like, hey, I want to build X. And I'm just like, no, what's your question? And they're like, I don't know. Maybe I want to build Y. And I'm like, no, but like, what will we learn about how brains work based on what you want to do? And it takes a surprisingly long time. And like to the level that with some people, I kind of go back to level 0. And I'm just like, write 3 questions worth answering on this piece of paper. And eventually then they're like, okay, now I get what like the field means with questions. But this like find questions that are worth answering is really, really important. And people underappreciate it.
Avisha, did you have something to add?
I just wanted to echo what Conrad said, actually. I found this at the beginning of my, when I was switching from electrical engineering back in undergrad. And then also now when I am mentoring master students and undergrad students who are from computer science background, and I say the exact same phrase to them, which Conrad said, it's like, but what is your question? and I think starting from that point is very important. I think many times when you switch fields, terminology becomes sort of puzzling of what you mean by a computational question, or just getting your, I think just getting your terminology right through talking to people and reading papers also helps a lot in terms of thinking about those questions, and then thinking of your end goals, like what kind of questions you're interested in. Are you interested in modeling processes of mind, or are you interested in like building tools for clinical interventions, for example? Like what do you want to use your computational skills for? I think that's also worth thinking about, because ultimately I realized some people have very strong inclination to use their skill set and build more skill set in terms of modeling processes of mind and modeling more empirical data, versus some people wanted to do more applied stuff where building tools for clinical intervention or BCI and those kind of things. So having that distinction and then narrowing it down also helps, and just seeing which papers click with you and seeing what kind of methodology and questions they asked.
Yeah, thank you all. I think pretty kind of related to this question, there's a couple questions in the Q&A around applying for a PhD in computational neuroscience from different backgrounds. We have someone with master's in biology and a physics minor. We have a computer science student who's looking to do a PhD in neuroscience. So what kind of quick tips do you all have for folks that are looking to make that application for a PhD in comp neuro?
So I'm happy to get started as I'm on the other side. So the first key is that you need to understand how the game works. And there's two completely different games being played, and the game is completely different across programs, and you need to absolutely know which game you're in. The one game is the department chooses, the other one is the professor chooses. A lot of neuroscience departments that have rotations in the first year, and like you look at like how they describe things, they're like in the first year you'll rotate through 3 different labs. These are department chooses, and then there's the you'll work with a professor from day one. That's professor chooses, and if it's professor chooses, the game is exclusively convince a professor that they want to hire you, for which you want to provide a very, very specific application to them. If it's department chooses, it does help if the professor really likes you, because if they're like, hey, I like this person. But you need to then not just appeal to them, you need to also appeal more generally. So the professor chooses thing is basically just like convince them that you're the person who should work in the lab, whereas otherwise you want to appeal much more broadly. And there's a gradient. Like computer science is almost always professor chooses, and psychology is almost always department chooses, and neuroscience is somewhere in between.
Conrad, is there a good sort of way to discover which set of rules, which game a given department's in? If it's
If
neuroscience.
you email a professor and they email you back relatively quickly, put in application to X, it probably means the department chooses. Whereas if they're like, okay, but hold on, like, let's talk if we'd be a good fit. If they're willing to talk with you, it's probably professor chooses. But like, there's no simple way of finding out.
Well, the very first way of finding out is that there are very specific criteria that you have to pass. I don't know, like GPAs, writing sample, this kind of things. And if you pass that, then the next unknown filter.
Yeah. So, but also like the professor, if it's professor choose, there's like most people will never even read your writing sample or something. I never do. So it depends. And I myself, I'm part of professor chooses departments like bioengineering and computer science, and I'm part of student chooses like psychology.
You know, another thing you could do potentially is reach out to graduate students within a lab if you don't hear back from a professor, because they typically have a less full inbox and they might be able to respond and just answer some questions about how a program works. And they will certainly know if it's a professor or a lab chooses.
So Conrad and Brad, what are the key things that you look out for in prospective students, that you look out for and say, oh, this would be a great mentee? Because I also know that mentors desire good mentees. They always look forward to when they're going to have their meetings. I know a lot of students might not believe that. You think the mentor knows everything. No. There's always that, mutual benefit. So what are the key things that you look out for and say, yeah, it's a good, this is the guy I'm looking for?
I mean, to kind of echo points Conrad has made before, I think when you make a research statement and the way that they connect with you, if there's that intellectual connection between what they're interested in and what you're doing, if they've sort of framed questions that get you as a lab mentor thinking in a direction that you hadn't thought about before, that's like an instant, like good connection that has me interested, right? Because then I can imagine having a conversation with that student, for 5 years and like having a great time developing new interests. So that to me, like a few sentences of a sort of like well-crafted thing that genuinely engages me in a question that I'm currently interested in, can be worth more than a lot of the other indicators.
Yeah, drive always wins against skills. So if you have a student and you see how they're like engaging and maybe they go to conferences and they talk with everyone there, or they go on Twitter or Blue Sky and talk with everyone there. Kind of if you see signs of them having energy, that really like you want energy and specialization and intellectualism. The specific skills, you can learn any skill, but like you cannot convert someone who has no drive into someone who has drive. Never seen that.
Yeah, I feel like this kind of might lead us to a good last question to hear from all of you. So, given all of your mentor experience or just experience in general, what qualifies distinguished mentees who successfully leverage communities like Neuromatch to build long-term academic or non-academic careers? So really kind of as our last thing to share with our group today, what are the things that really set apart a good mentee in your experience? So a little last piece of advice for our students and TAs.
Yeah, I would like to go first.
Yeah,
I'll go first. So make yourself special in the group. Just make sure if you're in a team, you are special. Make sure you engage. That's what I look for. Like Conrad was saying, someone who will engage you. So make sure you're engaging. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And, like Conrad said, like someone who has that drive, who's interested in going out beyond the sort of like requirements of their position and actively recruiting new connections, but also, and this is very important, being willing to learn and just be, approaching every conversation with a sort of humility that you're interested in getting back feedback about what you're talking about, so that you don't have this sort of like ego that you must be the right person.
And then there's the obvious things, not like be well prepared. If you get time to talk with someone, you should have read the paper ahead of time and you should know exactly what you're trying to get out of them. And then you should steer towards that. And like professors don't mind being a resource, they mind the waste of time. It's not about like being nice at small talk or something. I want people to have interesting scientific questions. I want their eyes to like be full of flames when they talk about it. I want them to tell me that I'm wrong about it. I love that. Like, don't like it's not like it's in regular life where you don't want to like overly be obnoxious or something. No, like if you disagree with my ideas, I remember as a young PhD student, I was giving like someone who was a big leader. So it's kind of like science in that sense is very different from the rest of the world. People actually like the pushback. They like the energy.
And I mean, your questions don't have to be brilliant. It just needs to show that you're interested and curious.
Yeah, I think we discussed a lot about what to do when you meet the people, but if you're not getting to meet the people, I would suggest a general advice would be to develop your questions and figure out what you're driven by reading tons of stuff, whatever interest you, papers, research papers, whatever you can get your hands on, and then just asking questions to people. Yeah, and that sort of self corrects you over time with that feedback if you take it seriously and apply it strategically. So, just figuring out what you're driven by, what your interests are, narrowing it down over time, and diving deeply into it, like we discussed, and then asking questions to people and putting that one foot in front of another. I think that goes a long way. And I think finding communities like Neuromatch also, I want to highlight, this is the place to get that feedback. I got feedback like hearing Conrad talk or Brad talk or people here talk, and earlier in my career when I was a student, when I was a TA, learning little things, how people are approaching questions and how people are approaching networking. It was immensely helpful sitting in a different country to figure out what was happening here that way. So these are the good opportunities to figure that out, and I'm sure other communities like this also exist to figure that out if you cannot directly access or meet such people.
And in following what Avisha is saying, like I find social media really, really helpful in that. You see a lot of researchers post their preprints before they're actually published in the journal. In their social media, they write a thread, they describe a brief description of what the research is about. That is the place that you can actually ask your questions and be noticed. And the next time you ask the same person the same question, the relevant questions, you will be remembered and you will have the discussion. And some other people in the field that are interested in the same topic, they will answer your questions. And don't be shy about writing your questions. Your questions don't have to be perfect, but if you write it, you'll get answer. You might even start a nice discussion. And that is also one of the places that you can get something scientific out of it. And Blue Sky, formerly Twitter, LinkedIn, these are the places that you will see those discussions going around, and nobody's gonna stop you from getting engaged in that conversations. It's free. It's yeah. I mean, by free, I don't mean like costly. I mean, it's a free place to write and get engaged.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you all. I feel like those are great tips. Yeah, just around, I feel like questions was such a big theme today. Don't be afraid to ask questions and continue to kind of have that intellectual curiosity. I think it's been really clear through our discussion, just the kind of to have that passion for the science that you're doing and find that place that you're passionate about is also so important. And then the come prepared, the challenge ideas, all of those types of things. So thank you all for sharing those tips for our students and for our discussion today. We do have a quick survey. All of you know that Neuromatch loves surveys. So I put the link in our chat, and then I also have this quick QR code. It's really just one question. Doing these post-academy events is a little bit different for us this year, so would love to know if you all like it. Do you want more? Do you want something different? We're always here to kind of hear what you have interest in. So I hope we were able to answer most of your questions, and thanks to our panelists who've continued to kind of type answers in the chat. But yeah, just a huge thank you to everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. So. Right. Bye.